guys, welcome back to Urban Rhino Tutorials. On this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a beaded and chain multi-strand necklace. This is going to have kind of a fall theme, so some of the colors I'm using are a little more natural, and then I'm going to have a few beads that have kind of some orange and kind of blushy color to them. Overall, though, it should be kind of a pretty, like, autumn theme at the end. So, like I said, this is multi-strand. This is going to be a very long, in-depth project. And again, it's one of those that's not difficult, just very time-consuming. So we're going to have several strands that are a mix of beads and chain. So I have a combination of different types of chain here. The curb chain, some cable chain, and then the paper clip chain. This is really popular right now. It's super cute. I love it. So what we are going to do to begin, I'm going to kind of scoot these out of the way, and we're going to take our fishing line. I've had some people ask in the past why I use fishing line instead of beading wire. And really the answer is quite simple. As I've said in the past, I am a high school jewelry and glass teacher, and so in order to keep the cost down, I use fishing line because, you know, like a spool like this is about $3. It's 700 yards, and it's strong. It holds up to 12 pounds. I generally buy this in bulk, so each student has like their own little spool. And by buying it in bulk, the cost, I get smaller spools, and it's like pennies a piece. So as you can imagine, as a teacher, the cost of stuff is very important to me. So that is the only reason why I use the fishing line. It is just as good as the beading wire, in my opinion. So what we're gonna do to start, I think I'm gonna end up doing probably 5 strands, and I want them to be a variety of lengths. So my longest one is going to be about 28 inches, and then it's gonna have this long tassel component that I'm going to hook on to it. So I want to start by cutting a piece of fishing line that is a little longer than what I actually need. Remember, you want to do that so that you have plenty of extra to be able to crimp the ends. So I'm gonna take a long piece of fishing line. I've got about 3 feet. I'm gonna put a crimp bead on and take the end and go back through the crimp bead to make a loop. And then I'm gonna take my pliers and crimp the bead. And when I do that, I wanna make sure that my loop is really small. So if you can see, it's really tiny, maybe 1/4 of an inch. So that's enough room to hook on a jump ring, but it's not so big that you have this big giant loop. And then you can just trim off the extra fishing line, if I can get a hold of it here. And I'm gonna do this for all 5 strands. And then what I will do is begin putting my beads on. I'm going to use this spool here to just kind of weight my end down. If you have a clipboard, you can certainly use that if you want, but I'm going to just begin putting on my beads in really no particular order. I just want to create some kind of pattern. So I'm going to have some strands that are very long that are all beaded, some strands that are shorter with a section of beads, and then chain to finish out the strand, and then we'll just kind of mix it up. So I'm going to begin putting on rocaille beads, these kind of matte gold ones. And for this particular strand, I am going to do all rocaille beads. And then when I move on to one of my other strands, I might do a pattern with some of my bigger ones. So and I say all rocaille beads, let me backtrack. I'm gonna do all rocaille beads, but then every so often I'm going to put in one of these bigger faceted, they're kind of like a gunmetal bead. I'm going to put those on. So I'm gonna put several of these rocaille beads on. And let me get to my first faceted bead, and then I'll show you just kind of how we move on from there. And I want to put on about 2 inches worth of these rocaille beads before I put a faceted bead on. And the other thing too to keep in mind is this is going to sit at the back, like the back of your neck. So I would avoid putting too many large beads at the back part, just because one, if they are kind of like your more important beads, your statement beads, no one's gonna see them really when they're back there. You also don't want it to get really bulky on the back of your neck. So when I say I'm putting 2 inches of these rocaille beads on, for the first one, I should really probably put about 4 inches on, put on a faceted bead, and then go every 2 inches from there on out until I get to the end, and then I'll go to 4 inches again. I hope that makes sense. So let me continue doing this. Basically what I'm going to do is go through and make my 5 strands that are beaded. And when I return, you'll see that they are varying lengths. So I will have 2 strands that are solely made up of just a combination of beads. And then I'm going to have 3 other strands that are shorter, and I'm gonna hook the chain on. So let me make sure that that's enough. I got one more here, and then I'm gonna put a faceted bead on so you can see. So we'll just do this. And then I would just continue on again with about 2 inches worth, and you can count out the beads. The reason I say 2 inches is because unless you're using like Miyuki beads or something that are cut perfectly, a lot of times these beads, so these rocaille beads should be 4 millimeters, but one bead is not always exactly the same size as the other. So if I say, okay, I'm putting 20 beads on this, and then a faceted bead, and then 20 beads, faceted bead, and so on, your sections might vary in size a little bit. So it's almost better to just lay your fishing line beside each section to make sure that you're getting the right length, or measure it with a tape measure if that's easier. So that way the size stays consistent regardless of the amount of actual beads that are on there. Okay, so again, I'm going to finish this strand. I'm gonna do my other 4 strands, just the fishing line part with the beads. And then when I return, I'm gonna show you how to put the chain onto those 3 segments. So now that I have all of my beaded segments complete, I did add in a 6th little segment here, and on this one I actually split it into 2 so I can have some chain in the middle and then chain here. And as you can see, I kind of spaced out my larger beads that way. You know, I feel like sometimes people will have a tendency to put all of their larger beads at the bottom, and then when you go to put all of your layers together, you end up with, you know, a big pile of large beads at the bottom. So you definitely want to think about spacing those out. So what I'm gonna do is determine, like I said, I have 3 different types of chain here. I'm gonna determine what chain I want to go where. This particular outside strand is done. I'm not gonna do anything to that. I'm going to add a little bit of chain to this first, the second one, if we're working your way from the outside in. Just a little chain on each side. So to do that, I think I'm gonna do, let's see here. I think I'm gonna go with the cable chain for this one. And I wanna make sure I'm adding the same amount on each one. And I'm gonna use this outer strand to determine how long I want to make my next strand in, and so on from there. So I'm adding about, no, that's about 2.5 inches of chain on each side, if I can get it to stay here. So what I'm gonna do is grab a small jump ring and open it up with my pliers, if I can find the ones I'm looking for. These were not what I was looking for, but I'm gonna open it up here. I don't like using the round pliers because they don't have any grip on them. Like that. I'm gonna hook one of the links onto the jump ring and then grab the loop that I created on the end here. So one thing I didn't show on screen was when I finished my strand, all I had to do was put a jump ring on and go back through the fishing line, just like you originally started each strand, and then you crimp it and trim off the extra. So you end up with a loop of fishing line or the beading wire, if that's what you're using, on each side of your beaded strands. So I'm gonna close up my jump ring. So now I have some chain attached. And I think this is, might be a little off screen there for you. So they're all gonna meet together at the same point back here. I'm gonna do the same for this side, and I'll do that one kind of off camera because I'm not gonna just go through and repeat myself. Let's work on this next one here. So I have these 2 segments. So I want to have chain on each side as well as chain in the middle. And I want to see how these are gonna lay because again, I don't want them to be, I don't want my strands to be the same length at all. I want them to stagger. So I'm just trying to make sure that I've got them where I want. This one I may end up shortening up a bit, more like that. Okay, so next one, I'm gonna use the curb chain for this one. It's a little thinner. That way the focus is more on the beads. And I'm just gonna cut about 2 inches for the middle. Again, grab a tiny jump ring, open it up. Let me grab my other pliers. And when you open it, just like with before, I'm gonna hook on a, hook the jump ring onto one of the links. This curb chain is so tiny, so it's nice because it looks, I mean, I like the smaller chain. I either like really small chain or I like really, really big chain. But because it's small, it's obviously a little harder to get your jump ring through. And I'm hooking it on one side of the segment, the beaded segment, close it up completely. You have to be very careful closing them up to make sure that you don't leave a little bit of a gap because the fishing line is so thin that it will come apart. So again, next jump ring, open it up. Remember, always twist your jump rings open, never pull them. So you twist open, twist close. Hook on the next segment onto the chain like this. Close it up. And there we go. So now that I have this part done, I'm sure you can imagine what I'm gonna do is add chain on each strand here. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of repeat this process. I want to, let me get this up into place. I want them to be, you know, kind of evenly spaced out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm gonna add chain wherever I need it, with this one being my very shortest strand. So it's just a simple little segment with a few larger beads on it. And I want this to sit almost, not quite like a choker, but a little bit longer, kind of like a a loose choker, so about a 2-inch gap off of your neck. So that's gonna be my last one. So I'm gonna finish all the strands, and then I'm gonna come back and show you how to assemble them all together with the clasp. Okay, so all of my strands are totally complete, and all I have to do is hook them all together. So I'm going to grab a couple jump rings, and I'm going to open them up. And actually for this, I want to use a couple jump rings that are a little bit larger. So ones that are gonna hold, because I have this paper clip chain that's thicker. So let me find, there we go. One that's a little bigger than what I was using to connect the segments together. So I'm gonna open the jump ring, and I'm just gonna start hooking these on. And we're gonna go from the inside out. And you'll see I did include an extra strand of just chain. I love the paper clip chain, so I wanted to include a little more of that. So I'm gonna start from, again, the inside and work my way out. The links on my curb chain are so tiny that it doesn't wanna go on the bigger jump ring. So all I'm gonna do is put a smaller jump ring on first, and then I will be able to connect that small jump ring to the larger one. Struggle, there we go. Okay, close that up completely, and then I'll hook that on. So then I will have to do that again if I can't get the other one on. Okay, so again, just in order, now we've got the next strand on, working my way through. We've got this one, and let's see if we can get this one on this time. If not, I'll add another link. Let me set this down safely and put another small jump ring on. I don't want to lose all these off of here. There we go. So again, small jump ring, open it up. And I'm gonna have to do this obviously on the other side as well. And then, oops, wrong one. Once we get all this put together, I will determine if I do want to still include the tassel. I might decide that there is enough going on this to not put the tassel on, so we'll just see. Totally up to you. Okay, that one's done. Pick my larger jump ring back up and hope I didn't knock everything off. Looks like I only lost one off of there. Okay. So you will know when you do this, if your chain is very small, you might need to add a smaller jump ring first. Okay, and then we go to this one. And then the very outer strand doesn't even have any chain on it. So let me finish this up so you don't have to watch me take an hour to do this. And I'm gonna do the other side as well. And then as soon as I come back, I'm gonna hook on the clasp and determine if we want to put a tassel on. Now that I have all of the strands connected together, I've got one, potentially two things left to do. So the first thing I'm gonna do is secure the clasp on the back. So to do that, I'm gonna take a couple jump rings again and open them up and attach it on here. I'm gonna use a smaller jump ring to attach a lobster clasp on one side, and then a little bit bigger jump ring on the other side so that it's kind of easier to connect into. And I'm gonna show you one more thing that you can do if you choose. So I'm attaching this little jump ring onto the big jump ring that we use to connect all of these strands together. And you wanna make sure that's closed really well. Okay, so there is my lobster clasp. And then on this side, there's a couple things that you can do. You can just put a jump ring on and be done with it. Or you can hook a little section of chain if you would like to have an extender. So if you want to make sure that it's, you know, a little bit longer. I'm not gonna do that for this one, just because I know that it's long enough. I was measuring it around my own neck. But you could certainly add some chain to extend it if you wanted. And all you would do is cut a couple inches of chain and hook it on to the large jump ring with a smaller jump ring. And then you would want to put a jump ring at the end of that as well. Let me get this on here. So all I'm doing right now is putting a smaller jump ring, and then I'm gonna put one more kind of larger one on. And that is just to keep it from, keep the jump ring from getting kind of lost in all of these strands here. And it'll make it a little easier to hook the, let me get the right size here. It'll make it a little easier to hook the lobster clasp onto. So I'm gonna open it up, hook it on here, and close it. And then the lobster clasp will hook onto that so that it's closed. So, let me get it to lay out here. Now, the last thing that I want to do is decide if I want to put a tassel at the end here. So if I choose to do that, I'm going to find the very last strand, and so the very longest strand, and I want to find the center point of that. Make sure I've got, yeah. So it's going to be right between these larger sections here. I'm gonna open this up, and this is just a pre-made little tassel kind of component here with this little filigree part here. And I'm just gonna open this jump ring that was already on there, hook it on. And that is it. Okay. So again, that's optional if you want to put that on there. When I put this necklace actually on myself, I may determine that I don't like the tassel and I might remove it. These strands are so long, and there's so many of them. I'm trying to get it laid out flat. So you might see in the next slide, I might remove that. But as you can see, very cute. What I would consider kind of a fall theme with the golds, browns, the kind of blushy color, rust color beads. I'm never gonna get this laid out flat, so you get the idea. But you could certainly change this up however you wanted. You could use different color. So if you want to do silver, rose gold, bronze, copper, whatever for your hardware and the chain, you could do different colored beads, certainly. So if, let's say it was a Christmas necklace, you could certainly do red and green, or you want to do winter, or whatever you want to do. But it's not difficult, it's just very time consuming, a very time consuming project. So I'm going to be doing some more layered necklaces in some upcoming tutorials, as well as some layered bracelets, so please stay tuned for those. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, guys.